Behind the heavily guarded walls of Pelican Bay State Prison, many of America's most dangerous, violent gang leaders roam the cell blocks. More than men consigned to their cells, these leaders head criminal empires, where they orchestrate havoc inside these walls and outside society at large. They narrate the bleak realities of gangs and leadership ruled by bloodshed, and loyalty amounts to lost lives more and more. One such figure is Ronald Yandell. Before his introduction into the California prison system, Ronald Yandell carried with him a considerable criminal history as a high-ranking member of the Aryan Brotherhood. He was exceedingly brutal and did not take long to build a dreadful reputation within the gang. So brutal was he that eventually he rose through the ranks to a leadership position in the U.S. most feared prison gangs, the Aryan Brotherhood. And then in August 2015, he sealed his gangster legacy by planning the murder of Hugo Pinell, a black guerrilla family inmate. Pinell had for long been on the hit list of the Aryan Brotherhood, who majorly viewed him as the one behind the murder of a number of correctional officers during the attempted breakout from prison in 1971. On August 12, 2015, Yandell orchestrated the murder that killed Pinell, which made him one of the most influential enforcers within the ranks of the Aryan Brotherhood. However, Yandell's crimes did not end here. He was finally convicted of plotting a few inmates' murders, including Kenneth Johnson, James Mickey, Paul Diaz, Michael Tripp, and Doug Maynard. These were no spontaneous instances of brutality, but cold-blooded acts done with the intention of retaining power in the prisons and outside. Every attack served as a kind of declaration to the other gangs and to law enforcement. The Aryan Brotherhood would not hesitate to do worse atrocities if it were going to impose its dominance, and Yandell was the man for carrying out the most violent of the gang's orders without hesitation. Yandell was indeed a major player in the racketeering conduct, but he was also a player in controlled substances trafficking. He played an extremely active role in the distribution of narcotics inside and out of the institution. His network of associates, therefore, enabled him to run a sophisticated show far beyond the confines of the prison walls. Despite calculated attempts to hang on to power, Yandell's downfall was through the very crimes that had propelled him to power. In 2021, a federal jury convicted him at 61 years old on multiple counts, including murder in aid of racketeering and conspiracy to distribute illegal drugs. He is currently incarcerated in Pelican Bay State Prison and continues serving his lengthy sentence there, as the reign of terror he had embarked on has been cut short by law. Next one is Omar Arzate. Omar Arzate was born into crime in Los Angeles with a notorious Mexican Mafia connection. Responsible for gang activity on the street from an early age, Arzate's violent tendencies quickly brought him to the attention of law enforcement. He soon became known as a fierce and unyielding enforcer, for which he would eventually land in Mexican Mafia ranks, one of California's most powerful prison gangs. Arzate was only 29 at the time he received 29 years and 8 months in prison for crimes which included assault with a machine gun, kidnapping, and making criminal threats. The crime had already been elevated to the extreme by adding assault weapon use to the charges. Arzate also received a concurrent 3-year sentence for resisting and threatening an officer with violence that further cemented his dangerous reputation. Arzate entered Pelican Bay State Prison in April 2021. There, he continued to carry on with his practices in the Mexican Mafia. While interned in one of the most secure prisons in the United States, Arzate planned crimes, sending instructions on how to assault other prisoners and correctional officers, as well as controlling the flow of illicit substances inside the penal system. His ability to maintain control over these operations, even under the restrictive conditions of Pelican Bay's Security Housing Unit, SHU, demonstrated his deep-rooted connections and unwavering commitment to the Mexican Mafia. Arzate's aggressive aspect went on full display one April 2024 date when a fight erupted between inmates Michael R. Shalane and Joseph Quintero during an ordinary day of activities. The fight quickly became fatal, and officers were only just in time to prevent finding Shalane stabbed several times and mortally wounded. Medical personnel fought in vain to try and save him, but Shalane died that night. A search of the area yielded a homemade knife, which tied Arzate to the deadly assault. The violence surrounding Pelican Bay left little doubt that Arzate had been continuing his work of planning assaults from inside his prison walls, even after serving nearly 3 years in the notorious prison. Arzate's criminal authority extended well beyond violence. He had strong roots in the control of illicit drugs flowing through the prison system. Even under very brutal conditions of confinement, he continued to hold a commanding position in Mexican Mafia operations inside Pelican Bay and throughout the state. Arzate is currently serving life in prison for his many crimes. Finally, the last one in our today's list is Antonio Guillen. Antonio Guillen was suspected to be very actively and long-term implicated in systemic crime and extortion, as well as violent assault and murder, but not to the degree that he was suspected of planning the murder of rival gang members. Indeed, he was central to the planning of many of the more harmful and important missions of these gangs, making him feared by his allies as much as pursued in equal fear by his enemies. The unyielding tenacity with which Guillen endeavored to assume control of the Nuestra Familia operations solidified his position as one of the top leaders within Nuestra Familia. However, in 2008, his crimes did finally catch up with him as he was arrested and indicted on numerous federal charges. In the complaint, the indictment charged him with racketeering, conspiracy to commit murder, and drug trafficking. This indictment was part of a larger federal operation hoping to take down the strong and increasingly violent leadership being run through Nuestra Familia. These convictions resulted in Guillen's sentencing to life in prison. On July 21, 2011, he was transferred to the most secure facility California operates, Pelican Bay State Prison, to the SHU, Security Housing Unit of Solitary Confinement, that no other jail in this state is designed for, reserved for the worst inmates. Even with these limitations, Guillen maintained an influence in Nuestra Familia and even coordinated gang activities from his cell behind closed doors through secret communication, means like passing messages behind their respective cells and through the drain pipes. Despite this, Guillen's star kept shining bright, one which also, during the 2013 hunger strike, saw him involved as part of key organizers, along with influential inmates including Todd Ashker, Ronnie Jamaa Dewberry, and Arturo Castellanos. The group of inmates known as the Short Corridor Collective planned a statewide protest concerning their indefinite solitary confinements. Out for 59 days, the strikers protested the practice of holding inmates like Guillen for years, in solitary without being afforded due process. The protest brought national attention to horrible conditions at Pelican Bay and resulted in meaningful policy changes at the California solitary confinement regime. This does not deter Guillen's stature in Nuestra Familia, even during the hunger strike, which attracted much public attention. His protest provided evidence that he not only had leadership but also adaptability, and he knew exactly how to influence others, even at such a level of extremes. It proved him to be a strategic thinker, capable of using his position at his will, yet keeping the control over the gang. Today, Antonio Guillen continues to serve out his life sentence inside the walls of Pelican Bay State Prison. Life in prison will forever keep him behind those walls. However, his power inside Nuestra Familia speaks volumes about who this man is, even from prison. Stories of such gang lords inside prison walls unveil a dark reality in which violence, power, and control stretch far beyond the prison walls. These men, who were once feared in the streets, remain influential even in the prison system as they orchestrate acts of brutality and oversee. Their stories are not the redemption stories, but more a cold reality of deep-set power that does well in the dark of America's most infamous jails. Many of them will spend the rest of their lives in prison or decline gravely into bad health. Still, legacies of fear and violence do continue to resound, both inside the walls of prison and further. These lives remind us how crime can persist through well-organized gangs and the efforts that those individuals have to make to curtail the power of such gangs. As they sit behind bars, their impact is still being felt in the underworld and in the efforts to rid the world of the cycle of crime and violence they help to spur.